Downton Abbey told a story of class divides, forbidden love, and lives bound by duty, elegant, controlled, and seemingly timeless. But real life didn't offer that protection. 16 years later, some cast members are gone, others battle illness, while a few have risen to immense wealth. What really happened after the cameras stopped rolling? Join us as we uncover their real lives and honor the legacies they left behind. Hugh Bonneville as Robert Crawley. Robert Crawley, the restrained, duty-bound Earl of Grantham in Downton Abbey, 2010, was portrayed by Hugh Bonneville. At 47 years old, he embodied a man standing at the edge of collapse while pretending everything was under control. From the first season, his authority felt heavy rather than triumphant. Hugh Richard Bonnewell Williams was born on November 10, 1963, in Paddington, London, and long before fame arrived, his career was shaped by uncertainty. For years, he was respected in theater but overlooked on screen, moving between supporting roles that paid the bills but never secured his future. Even after acclaimed work in Notting Hill and Iris, he remained far from indispensable. When Downton Abbey finally arrived, it saved his career, but it also trapped him. The strain did not remain abstract. Bonneville later admitted that the relentless filming schedule, constant public scrutiny, and pressure to maintain a composed image took a toll on his physical health. Weight fluctuations became a visible struggle, forcing him into strict regimens while filming under intense deadlines. However, Bonneville continued working steadily, but with greater caution. He reprised Robert Crawley in Downton Abbey, A New Era, and later the grand finale, while also taking narration and hosting roles that demanded less physical strain. These choices reflected survival to preserve longevity rather than chase momentum at all costs. Today, Hugh Bonneville is 63 years old, still active but visibly more selective. With an estimated net worth of around $8 million, his life now reflects endurance rather than ascent. A man who paid for stability with years of silent pressure and who survived fame by learning when to slow down. Elizabeth McGovern as Cora Crawley. Cora Crawley, the American Countess of Grantham in Downton Abbey, 2010, was played by Elizabeth McGovern. At 49 years old, she brought warmth and emotional intelligence to a rigid English world. Her performance felt gentle, but it carried the weight of compromise and restraint. Cora was strength disguised as softness. Elizabeth Lee McGovern was born on July 18, 1961, in Evanston, Illinois, and her early career rose too quickly to be safe. An Oscar nomination for Ragtime placed her on a pedestal she could never fully escape. As leading roles faded, she faced long periods of professional silence, watching Hollywood's attention drift away while her talent remained unchanged. Even acclaimed appearances in films like Once Upon a Time in America became memories rather than momentum, creating a quiet but persistent professional grief. The psychological strain intensified as age became an unspoken obstacle. McGovern has alluded to the emotional fatigue of constantly proving relevance in an industry that rarely forgives time. Anxiety and creative insecurity became part of daily life. Music, through her band Sadie and the Hotheads, emerged not as ambition, but as refuge to cope when acting roles felt increasingly conditional. Later, McGovern remained active on her own terms. She reprised Cora Crawley in the Downton Abbey films, while also producing and starring in more intimate projects like The Chaperone. These works reflected a shift away from validation toward control, choosing stories that allowed her to exist without apology rather than compete for attention. Now, Elizabeth McGovern is 65 years old. She continues acting selectively, balancing film, music, and production, far from the frantic pace of her early career. With an estimated net worth of around $4 million, her legacy is defined not by constant success, but by resilience, the ability to endure disappointment, adapt quietly, and keep creating even when the world stopped asking. Michelle Dockery as Lady Mary Crawley. Lady Mary Crawley, the fiercely controlled, emotionally guarded eldest daughter in Downton Abbey, 2010, was played by Dockery. At 29 years old, she stepped into a role that demanded icy composure and buried vulnerability. From the beginning, Lady Mary became a mirror of restraint that would quietly consume its actress. Michelle Suzanne Dockery was born on December 15, 1981, in Romford, Essex, into a working-class family far removed from the privilege she portrayed on screen. Her career was built on theater praise without financial security, constant auditions, and the anxiety of being replaceable. Even as the series exploded globally, Dockery faced a new torment: fear of life after Downton. Projects like Hannah and Anna Karenina offered prestige, but they did not guarantee permanence. The emotional toll deepened after 2015. Dockery has spoken about periods of profound grief and psychological strain following personal loss, compounded by exhaustion from years of intense filming schedules. During roles such as the haunted outlaw in Godless and the unraveling lawyer in Defending Jacob, the pain she carried off-screen bled into performances shaped by fatigue, sorrow, and suppressed trauma. Between 2017 and 2025, Dockery pushed forward despite that weight. She embraced darker, psychologically demanding roles in Anatomy of a Scandal and returned repeatedly to Lady Mary in the Downton Abbey films, even as the character aged alongside her. These years were marked by discipline rather than comfort. By 2026, Michelle Dockery is 45 years old. She continues acting selectively while preparing for a quieter chapter of life, balancing career with motherhood and long-term stability. With an estimated net worth of around $4 million, her journey reflects not glamour, but endurance. Fame earned through control and survival achieved through silence. Laura Carmichael as Lady Edith Crawley. Lady Edith Crawley, the overlooked, wounded middle daughter in Downton Abbey, 2010, was portrayed by Laura Carmichael. At just 24 years old, she carried the show's deepest emotional bruises. Edith was rejection made visible. And Carmichael lived inside that pain for years. Laura Carmichael was born on the 16th of July, 1986, in Southampton, England, and her road to Downton Abbey was paved with invisibility. After drama school, she survived on temporary jobs and endless auditions that led nowhere. When Downton finally arrived, it did not deliver instant validation. While other characters were adored, Edith became a symbol of humiliation and pity. Public criticism blurred into Carmichael's private doubts, creating a feedback loop of insecurity she could not escape. As the seasons progressed, the cost intensified. Playing perpetual heartbreak required emotional endurance without catharsis. Carmichael later spoke of how the isolation written into Edith's life quietly reshaped her own: anxiety, exhaustion, and the constant fear of being replaceable. Roles like Agatha in The Secrets. She keeps extended that psychological darkness, portraying obsession and unraveling with uncomfortable realism. She resisted retreating into comfort. Projects such as Marcella and a United Kingdom allowed her to shed aristocratic restraint and confront harsher truths. Yet the industry continued to frame her through suffering. Now, at 40 years old, Carmichael continues working with restraint rather than urgency. She chooses roles that protect her rather than consume her. With an estimated net worth of around $2 million, her story is not defined by triumph, but by endurance, the quiet strength of someone who remained standing after years of being overlooked. Alan Leech as Tom Branson. Tom Branson, the class-defying chauffeur in Downton Abbey, 2010, was played by Alan Leech. At 29 years old, he stepped into a role built on rebellion, ideology, and quiet isolation. His character challenged an entire social order while never fully belonging to either side. That tension followed Leech far beyond the screen. Alan Leech was born on the 18th of May, 1981 in Killiney, County Dublin, and his early career moved fast without ever feeling secure. Irish television and cinema offered recognition, but not permanence. When Downton Abbey elevated him internationally, it also trapped him inside expectation. He became the political conscience, while Hollywood still treated him as peripheral, visible, but never central. Even prestige projects like The Imitation Game kept him just outside the spotlight. That uncertainty took a physical and psychological toll. Constant travel, long separations from home, and the pressure to maintain momentum led to chronic exhaustion. Leech has spoken openly about anxiety during stretches when auditions slowed and relevance felt fragile. Playing morally conflicted figures, most notably Paul Prenter in Bohemian Rhapsody, deepened that weight, forcing him to inhabit characters defined by guilt and isolation. Rather than chasing visibility, he chose continuity. Returning to Tom Branson across the Downton Abbey films offered familiarity, while darker television work such as The Vanishing Triangle reflected a man more interested in substance than reinvention. The ambition softened, the discipline remained. At 45 years old, Leech continues working steadily, anchored by family and a clearer sense of self. With an estimated net worth of around $3 million, his journey reflects the unseen cost of crossing borders, social, cultural, and professional, and surviving the space in between without losing himself. Jim Carter as Charles Carson. Charles Carson, the rigid, unyielding butler of Downton Abbey, 2010, was portrayed by Jim Carter. At 62 years old, he embodied tradition hardened into identity. His presence was authoritative, but deeply fragile beneath the surface. Carson was order clinging to relevance, and Carter understood that instinct intimately. James Edward Carter was born on the 19th of August, 1948 in Harrogate, England, and his path to recognition was long and physically demanding. He lived a nomadic theatrical life, fringe stages, experimental companies, even circus training, earning little and sacrificing stability. By the time Downton Abbey arrived, Carter had already endured decades of uncertainty, watching younger actors pass him by while he waited for a defining role. Age itself became a burden during the series' run. Carter faced the strain of long filming days while managing the realities of an aging body. Fatigue, joint pain, and the quiet anxiety of declining stamina became constant companions, though rarely acknowledged publicly. Playing Carson in Downton Abbey only amplified the irony of battling physical limits behind the scenes. However, Carter continued working relentlessly despite those challenges. He reprised Carson in all Downton Abbey films, while appearing in major productions such as My Week with Marilyn, The Good Liar, and Wonka. He determined not to disappear quietly after finally being seen. In 2026, Jim Carter is 78 years old. He remains respected, active, and disciplined, though visibly slowed by time. With an estimated net worth of around $5 million, his story is one of endurance rather than reinvention. A man who spent a lifetime waiting for recognition only to receive it when the body was already asking for rest. Joanne Froggatt as Anna Bates. Anna Bates, the gentle, self-sacrificing lady's maid in Downton Abbey, 2010, was played by Joanne Froggatt. At 30 years old, she stepped into a role that demanded constant emotional exposure. Anna's kindness was tested through pain, silence, and humiliation. What appeared as strength on screen required enormous personal cost behind it. Joanne Froggatt was born on the 23rd of August, 1980 in Littlebeck, North Yorkshire, a rural village where ambition offered no shortcuts. She left home at 13 to chase acting, entering the industry through roles that repeatedly placed her inside trauma. Long before Downton Abbey, she portrayed victims of real-life violence in projects like Danielle Cable, Eyewitness, and See No Evil. These performances earned respect, but also conditioned her to carry darkness quietly, without complaint. That burden reached its breaking point during Downton Abbey's most harrowing storyline. Anna's sexual assault was not symbolic. It was graphic, prolonged, and emotionally brutal. Froggatt later acknowledged how difficult it was to separate herself from the character's shame and fear. The work followed her home, disturbed her sleep, and reshaped how she understood vulnerability. Awards and praise arrived, but they came wrapped in emotional exhaustion rather than celebration. Instead of relief, her post-Downton choices intensified the psychological toll. In Liar, Froggatt inhabited a woman trapped in public disbelief after sexual assault, forced to relive trauma over multiple seasons. The role reopened wounds rather than closing them. At the same time, her personal life collapsed quietly. Her marriage ended after years of strain, leaving grief layered atop already fragile emotional ground. Today, Joanne Froggatt is 46 years old. She continues acting selectively while prioritizing emotional boundaries she once ignored. With an estimated net worth of around $4 million, her career stands as a testament to endurance rather than ease, a woman who carried some of television's heaviest stories so convincingly that few realized how much they cost her. Lesley Nicol, as Mrs. Patmore. Mrs. Patmore, the formidable yet tender-hearted cook in Downton Abbey, 2010, was portrayed by Lesley Nicol. At 57 years old, she entered the spotlight long after most careers peak. Her sharp humor masked decades of uncertainty. Every command in the kitchen echoed a lifetime spent waiting to be seen. Lesley Nicol was born on the 7th of August, 1953 in Manchester, and her path into acting was defined by delay rather than discovery. She trained seriously, worked relentlessly, and still spent years moving between theater, guest roles, and auditions that ended in silence. Even acclaimed performances in East is East and West End productions failed to guarantee security. The industry simply kept her waiting. The cost of that waiting accumulated physically and emotionally. Constant travel, stage work without rest, and the pressure of remaining useful as she aged created deep fatigue. When Downton Abbey finally arrived, success collided with stamina. Nicol shouldered international filming schedules, press tours, and long hours at an age when the body demands mercy. She never complained publicly, choosing professionalism over confession. Rather than slow down, she expanded her voice. Nicol appeared in projects ranging from Beecham House to Mr. Bates versus the Post Office, while channeling her life into the autobiographical musical How the Hell Did I Get Here? Then grief interrupted everything. Her husband, David Heald, died in May 2022, halting the musical's momentum and leaving a silence no applause could fill. Yet Nicol returned, quietly, deliberately. By 2026, at 73 years old, she remains active and respected, with an estimated net worth of around $2 million. Her story is not late success. It is resilience written over decades, proof that survival itself can become a legacy. Sophie McShera as Daisy Mason. Daisy Mason, the awkward, overlooked kitchen maid in Downton Abbey, 2010, was played by Sophie McShera. At 25 years old, she entered the series quietly, almost invisibly. Daisy was not written to shine, but to linger in the background. That quietness mirrored McShera's own uncertain place in the cast. Sophie McShera was born on the 17th of May, 1985 in Bradford, England, far from the industry centers that accelerate careers. Her early years were shaped by stage work, touring productions, and small television roles that offered experience but little security. When she joined Downton Abbey, her character was initially minor, easily replaceable, easily ignored. While others carried sweeping storylines, McShera waited, uncertain whether her role would survive another season. That uncertainty became its own pressure. Remaining relevant without dramatic arcs required patience and restraint. McShera slowly transformed Daisy from background presence into emotional anchor, navigating class frustration, intellectual awakening, and quiet resentment. Outside the series, she faced the difficult transition every ensemble actor knows: how to step out of a massive hit without being swallowed by it. Projects arrived sporadically, never guaranteed. Rather than chasing spectacle, she leaned into versatility. Cinderella, 2015, placed her briefly inside a global Disney machine, while Gallivant revealed her musical range and comic timing. Theater remained a refuge, allowing her to rebuild confidence away from cameras. Each choice reflected caution rather than ambition, survival rather than dominance. At 41 years old, McShera continues working steadily, returning to the stage in 2025 with Shucked, while maintaining a private personal life she refuses to monetize. With an estimated net worth of around $1 million, her career is defined not by headlines, but by persistence, the quiet resilience of someone who learned how to endure without disappearing. Rob James-Collier as Thomas Barrow. Thomas Barrow, the bitter, isolated footman in Downton Abbey, 2010, was portrayed by Rob James-Collier. At 34 years old, he took on one of the series' most emotionally loaded roles. Thomas was cruel, lonely, and painfully closeted. The character demanded constant tension, never relief. Rob James-Collier was born on the 23rd of September, 1976 in Stockport, England, without formal acting training and without industry connections. His path into acting was unconventional: marketing degrees instead of drama school, instinct instead of polish. Early roles in Coronation Street gave him visibility, but little protection. Being written out violently reminded him how fragile television success can be. Thomas Barrow changed everything, and cost him. Playing a gay man consumed by self-loathing placed James-Collier under constant scrutiny, both from audiences and himself. The role required cruelty without caricature, pain without sentimentality. At a time when LGBTQ+ characters were rarely treated with nuance, the pressure to get it right was immense. Emotional fatigue became part of the job. After Downton Abbey, he avoided comfort. Projects like The Ritual and Ackley Bridge allowed him to shed period drama expectations and rebuild credibility in darker, contemporary roles. The work was less glamorous, but more honest. He remained visible without becoming predictable, choosing intensity over safety. Today, at 50 years old, James-Collier continues working steadily, balancing television with fatherhood and a deliberately low public profile. With an estimated net worth of around $2 million, his legacy rests not on likability, but on truth, the courage to inhabit difficult characters and live with the discomfort they leave behind. Time didn't just age the cast of Downton Abbey, it tested them. Behind the elegance and tradition were years of pressure, loss, and quiet endurance that no script could soften. So when you look at them now, the change isn't just physical, it's lived. Which transformation surprised you the most? And whose story hurt the hardest? Leave your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more untold cast journeys like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay with us for the next story.